Hello and welcome to the first in probably a couple videos I'll do on Model Y basics. As I've been putting out a couple videos about our delivery and then the accessories for our Model Y, a couple questions keep getting asked, and that's about some of the basic functions and size of the vehicle, things like that. So I wanted to cover some of those. So if you own one, this might not be the video for you, but if you're thinking about getting a Model Y or wondering how it stacks up against other vehicles, this is going to be a relatively thorough rundown of some of the main stats and some of the things I didn't even look at before we bought. And I thought I'd start today by talking about some of the information on the main information sheet that you get with the vehicle. Now, I didn't even really look at this before we bought it because I knew most of the stats and kind of knew what to expect. But I found some pretty interesting information here, so I just wanted to quickly run through it and share that with you. And it kind of covers some of the technical questions about the vehicle. And I'll put this up on screen so you can see it. Tesla Model Y long-range all-wheel drive. Standard features: 3-phase 4-pole induction motor front, 3-phase 6-pole internal permanent magnet motor in the rear, drive inverter with regenerative braking system, microprocessor controlled lithium-ion battery, onboard charger and mobile connector. 120 volt and J1772 charging adapters are the ones that come standard with it. On the safety specs, 8 cameras, forward radar, and 12 ultrasonic sensors, 6 front row and 2 side curtain airbags, 3-point safety belts with belt reminders for driver and passengers, 2 latch lower anchors and tethers for children in the second row. That's how you affix the car seats on the backside of the second row. Electronic stability and traction control, 4-wheel anti-lock disc brakes with electronic parking brake, child safety locks and manual cargo door release mechanisms, anti-theft alarm system, that is the Sentry mode, and off-road assist, which is kind of a slip start or muddy path setting you can choose on the screen. In the interior, you have the 15-inch cap-active touchscreen, onboard maps and navigation, Wi-Fi and mobile network connectivity, FM radio only. So if you're a big AM radio fan, you might need to find a solution, a web-based solution to find those stations you like. Hands-free talking with Bluetooth, voice-activated controls, high-definition backup camera, one-touch power windows, dual-zone climate control, 12-volt power outlet, and 4 USB ports. The 12-volt power outlet is actually in the back of the trunk here, and the 4 USB ports, there are 2 facing the rear seats and 2 in the center console underneath the cup holders. And the exterior has full LED lighting. And then the government 5-star safety ratings. This is something I knew because I follow Tesla pretty closely and had seen the results come out. But overall vehicle score is based on the combined ratings of frontal, side, rollover, and should only be compared to other vehicles of similar size and weight. And that overall score is 5 stars. And that includes the frontal crash for the driver, 5 stars, passenger, 5 stars, and those are based on the risk of injury from a frontal impact. Side crash, front seat, 5 stars, rear seat, 5 stars. And rollover, 5 stars based on the risk of a rollover from a single vehicle crash. Model Y is going to be very, very safe. And then to wave the USA flag a little bit, for this vehicle, US-Canadian parts content is 60%, and major sources of foreign parts content is 20% from Mexico. And then I imagine the other 20% is, from other global sources. And for this vehicle, the final assembly point is Fremont, California, country of origin of the motor assembly, USA, gearbox transmission, USA. And for this vehicle, the battery final assembly point was Fremont, California, and onboard charger final assembly point was Fremont, California. So USA, good US jobs, so happy to see that. Far more content and assembly is done in the US than I really expected. And the backside of this sheet is all about price and options and things like that, fuel economy, and that's really for another video. Here I'm trying to cover most of the big stats. So I'll get into that once we have all of our accessories and add-ons finalized, so I can give you a good full financial picture for this vehicle. So that gives you the basics for the broad stats, but let's take a look at some of the physical sizes of things. People have asked about the clearance, the height of the top of the vehicle, and I figured this is a good opportunity to also look at the size of the trunk, the frunk, and the different spaces. So I've got my handy tape measure. Let's get to it. I know I have this overexposed, but I want you to be able to see into these dark areas as we're filming. So first, let's take a look at the under trunk in the back section of the vehicle. And that is, at its widest, 32 inches. At its most narrow, I would say 26 inches, and about 14 inches deep. It is also, at its widest, 18 front to back, and at its most narrow, I would say 15 front to back. Then on each side, there are these side pockets behind the wheel wells. A foot wide in the back side of it, 9.5 inches wide on the front side of it. It is about 12 deep, but it does go up to about 23 inches clearance in there. So if you're a camper, this would be a good spot to stick a tent or a sleeping bag in either side of here. So that was the left side. The right side is 7.5 on the back side, 11 inches on the front side, but about that same 23 inches tall. To the back of the seats, I would call that 38 inches, but on the floor, about 42. Again, that's at its highest point. Outside edge, I would call that 39 inches. Now, if we put the seats forward, and mine gets stuck on my daughter's car seat, so I can't get them down, but they do lay flat. And to the back of the front seat where I sit, to the back here is, I'm going to call that 67.5 inches. So a little over 5.5 feet. And obviously I could move my seat forward and we'd get some more space there. If you had a piece of lumber and you were going all the way to your touchscreen to the back, that is about 9 feet. I'm going to test this out by buying a little lumber from the hardware store and some other things I need that'll be 8 feet in length. So that should mean I should be able to get it through the center without hitting the touchscreen, as long as nothing slides forward. Side to side, the trunk at its most narrow, I would call that 37.5 inches. The center of the hatch opening is 27.25 inches tall, but that lowers on the sides to only 25 inches at the edge. And then obviously up by the doors, it widens out to the full width between the doors. So we'll check what that is. But first I want to look at this second interior trunk. At its deepest, I would say it is 5.5 inches tall. I would take maybe 2 inches off for this bump right here. Really, you'd only want to store some really flat things back here. But it pretty much follows the contour of the vehicle. That's 29 inches wide in the deep part. It does get wider toward the front, but also that is more shallow. So it's 34 at the widest of the front part. And front to back, we will call that 19 inches. And that's pretty perpendicular side to side. If you had both seats down, in this upper section, between armrest to armrest, you'd have about 50 inches when both doors are closed. So at a comfortable seating position for me, I am about 5'10", or I used to be before I got old. I've got plenty of leg room, and in front of my knees, even with, if I were sitting in the front seat, I'd still have about 4.5 inches of clearance. So that is plenty. With the seats reclined back here, it's even easier and pretty comfortable. I could easily do this on a road trip. Even if I sit uncomfortably tall, I've got about 2 inches above my head. And obviously reclining would give me even more space. Now, another thing I've noticed coming from the S is that the back doors are much shorter. And so it's easier to open in a parking lot without worrying about dinging the car next to you. But getting my daughter in, lifting her up into her car seat is a little more difficult. It's good from a height perspective because you're not lifting down, but the space is more narrow. So at its widest, it's about 27 inches. And at its most narrow point here, we're probably looking at 23 inches. So it takes a little more maneuvering. But as kids get bigger, most likely they'll be able to jump in the back seat on their own and may even prefer that. So just a watch out, but I've managed to make it work. It's just slightly different coming from the S. So while we're at the side of the car, let's take a look at the overall height of the vehicle. And this is with the 19-inch wheels that are just the stock standard ones that come on it. I would call that about 62.5 inches, maybe 63. Now, obviously, I wouldn't put anything in a garage or go under an overhang that's right at that 63-inch mark, but it gives you an idea of the type of clearance you're going to have. But as you can see, I'm still significantly taller than this, so even in our low garage, it's not a problem. Someone else had a question about the clearance, so let's take a look here. On the main part of the vehicle, I would call that 6 inches. There are a couple places that hang down slightly. If you look back here by the rear tire, it's closer to 5.5, and I'm not seeing any other parts hang lower than that, so I guess I would call it 5.5 to be safe, but it looks like most of the body is 6 inches up. All right, let's take a look at the front now. And again, front to back at its widest is 17 inches. At its most narrow down below, I would call that 14. And then the widest part of the back here is 34.5. The front, I would call that 28. That tapers down to about 20, I'll call it 24 in the front and 27 in the back. But then there are these little ledge pieces that sit up 5 inches and are really only 1.75 inches deep. So you could probably rest something on there. I think maybe I'll do a luggage test and throw some different bags in here to showcase that. Our front height is about 11 inches. Our rear height, I would call that 15. And there is a little inset, so you might be able to go in the very center a little higher than that, but that's the basics. And this is where my microphone stopped recording. But my wife was kind enough to help me finish the exterior measurements, and the width of the body is 76 inches or 6'4", and the mirrors, when they're extended, that extends that out to 84 inches or 7 feet. Then we took a look at the length, and that came out to be 15 feet 7 inches. So kind of a deceptively long vehicle. Now let's move inside and take a look at the storage spaces in the center console. In the front compartment, between the phone charger and cup holders, the sliding door reveals 2 USB-C ports and storage. The opening is 6x6, and the bottom, about 8 inches below the door, is also 6x6. But you can see how it angles, and the upper area of the compartment is actually 13 inches at its longest below the door. So a small opening, but a pretty versatile space. While taking a closer look at the other compartment under the armrest, I found the second 12-volt outlet. The opening starts at 6.5 inches wide, but tapers back to 6 inches, and the length between them is 7.5 inches. At the backside, it goes down pretty straight, about 3 inches before sloping down and forward. And under the 12-volt outlet, the full length of the cavity is 11 inches long. For us, it's the perfect place to store spare diapers and baby wipes. Well, I think that's probably plenty of numbers for today. Hopefully this has been helpful. If I missed something, feel free to let me know down below in the comments, and I'll get to it in one of the other videos that I'm planning on doing in this series of Model Y basics. So look for that. They'll be interspersed with some other videos I have coming over the next several weeks. If you've enjoyed this, please feel free to like, share, subscribe, all that stuff. And if you didn't, thanks for sticking with it anyway. Thank you for watching, have a great day, and I'll catch you in the next one.